to have new members come on this evaluation committee each year, so they bring new insights and new thoughts and in fact, additional stakeholders that we should talk to. So it's important. So thank you for that. Not a problem. And we'll respond that way. And by the way, we do our best to reach out and connect with every stakeholder, but sometimes we're unable to make the connection, and so to have an expansive group of folks that we reach out to is always better than not. So anyway, thank you for that. So why don't we then proceed with the next agenda item? And before I do, I do want to take a minute to thank everybody on the call today, because we were all involved in an extended conversation yesterday afternoon, and so to have you give us more of your time today is an illustration of your commitment to serving the children and families of the Commonwealth around their educational needs. And so thank you for your additional time focused on this particular assignment that we have in front of us. So I think the next item on our agenda is to, in fact, review the commissioner's self-assessment, and that's or self-evaluation. And that's the document that you have in front of you that's dated April 13th, 2020, and identified in the subject section as 2020-2021 self-evaluation. And so I'm assuming that each of us had an opportunity to review this beforehand. This would be the time for any of us to express any issues or responses to the commissioner's self-evaluation. And so the floor is open for that purpose. Anyone? Okay. Hearing none, the presumption is that we will take the commissioner's self-evaluation into consideration as we prepare our own evaluation of his performance, and basically what he's provided us with is what he believes have been his accomplishments during this most historic year, and so we'll be able to use it as yet another piece of information or resource for which we will base our own evaluation of his performance. So thank you very much for having reviewed it. If post this meeting, we'll have another opportunity to obviously reconvene and have further discussion, obviously, and so there'll be other opportunities for us to kind of evaluate and deepen our analysis of his own self-evaluation. So we'll continue to move on. No, I see your hand, Matt.
I just want to make one point. I mean, I read it and I'm good with it. I just wanted to say that, I mean, it was, I think it's a pretty sort of straight down the middle, not self-congratulatory, but, kind of just reminder and roadmap of the things that have been done, some of which I clearly remembered, some of which it's like, oh, wow, I forgot about that. Right. And the sheer volume of information on here, I mean, it's not like there's a bonus at stake or right. something like that. Right. I mean, there's right. a lot of time put into this, and it makes it a lot easier for us to do what we need to do. So I'm thanking him through you, James.
Yeah,
so.
Well, thank you. I think that we would all agree with that assessment, that there's been a lot accomplished during a very difficult year, and that he's been called upon to guide the department through that work, and I think that his evaluation reflects the comprehensive nature of that response, right? And so we certainly commend him and the department's efforts and energies to respond during a very difficult time. So, and it's all reflected in the 20 plus pages that are part of this evaluation. I see Amanda. Amanda, want to add something?
I do. Thank you. And I do want to acknowledge as well all of the work that the commissioner has led this past year, in particular, all of the response to the pandemic. At the same time, I think it will be incumbent upon us, especially as we get feedback from the various stakeholders, but I think in particular with the school district, is to have a better understanding of the of the impact, or less impact, but how were the several initiatives and tactics and support and guidance provided by the department received in districts, and wanting to get that kind of feedback to better understand how what was provided by BESE and led by the commissioner again received by the stakeholders, to give us a better sense of again the level of support that folks might various levels of support, and were these sort of the right tactics? Could there have been others? Just to better understand the actual impact of the tactics used, both positive and constructive.
Thank you, Amanda. Well said. Thanks. That's exactly what we hope to get from our stakeholder interviews. Thank you. All right. Going back to our agenda, we would now turn our attention to the review of the proposed questions that we might use for the purposes of this stakeholder interview process. Are there any thoughts about the questions? Are there any questions that you feel might be missing? Are there any amendments or modifications to the questions that you'd like to have us consider? Now would be the time for that.
I'll make just one comment, and it's not really to change anything. I kind of look at the first four questions as, particularly number 2, very broad in nature, which I like. It's not even saying, tell us how he did on exactly, any goals we set out. It's, tell us how you think the commissioner went about his work this year. And I think that leaves room for commentary, not just on kind of core strategies or what we set out a year ago as his goals, which I think is appropriate, particularly in the kind of year we had, like make it very broad. So I like that. Number 5 and 6 are kind of more forward looking. I'm not sure they're as relevant to the review for the past year, but as long as we're getting, particularly from external parties, as long as we're having the opportunity to speak with them on the phone, I think kind of 5 and 6 are kind of really good questions just to ask, to engage people and bring in some outside perspectives. So I have no problem, and I think the questions are fine and broad.
Awesome. Amanda?
Yeah, I think the one point I had was on the last question on where do you see the most opportunity for BESE to be effective. I am wondering if there's something, I'm actually looking for maybe something a little more specific relative to lessons learned from the pandemic and what our stakeholders might say about the opportunity we have before us that we want the department to take advantage of. And I just say this as also part of what I will probably be pushing for relative to his goal setting for this next school year is around, what are the bold actions? What are the big learnings we need to take about the pandemic that need to propel us toward closing the opportunity gaps? And I guess it's really important this year that we try to capture what we can learn from and build off of to take the actions that we need to as a Commonwealth. And I'd like that to be more explicit than what it is in these stakeholder questions. But I'm certainly open for discussion on that.
Amanda, I kind of agree with you and Matt too, in that this is such a good opportunity, although it's not necessarily, the performance review part. It's a great opportunity for us to get that sort of feedback for the prospective goals for next year as well from the stakeholders as we are talking to them, right? Because it's our opportunity to sort of get two things done at the same time, right?
Yeah, that's an awesome suggestion. Again, for the purposes of us trying to cultivate how to get what we need from them moving forward. Well said, Amanda and Catherine. I tried to draft something, and so just so we might have at least something that we could use as a model, and can modify to the extent that it's in the area or right direction. Amanda, what I came up with is what lessons have we learned from our responses to COVID-19, and how will those lessons advance our work in the coming year or two or more, whatever we want to use. Is that along the lines of what you had in mind, Amanda?
Yes, I think that would capture it.
Okay.
I think it'll come up anyway, to be honest. I think
Yes.
My experience has been that folks are very ready, willing, and able to lend their voice to this discussion.
Awesome.
In really highly meaningful way. Yeah.
Very good. Rhoda, did you capture that?
I have the first part. What lessons have we learned from this pandemic year? And the second part is what do you recommend should be the focus going forward? Something like that. Or please state your.
Sure. What lessons have we learned from our responses to COVID-19?
Right.
And how will those lessons inform our work in the coming year or two?
Okay.
That's great.
Great. Got it.
Okay. Very good. Awesome. And so if you would, you are Helene?
Right. Courtney's filling in because Helene has another commitment right now, and we between the two of us, we will get this to Helene, modify and update this list of questions, just as Helene will modify and update the list of stakeholders and so on.
Okay.
And we'll get that back to you.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
You're the best. So the last thing on our agenda is to kind of review the evaluation process. And generally speaking, keeping us really focused on our next task is to once Elaine modifies or amends the questions, pushes those questions out to us. We will then be required to begin the interviews. The individuals and entities assigned to us on the chart that is identified as the 2020-2021 timeline. And so we'll begin to make those calls. Our next meeting, I believe, is scheduled for, is it May 24th, Rhoda?
Courtney, do you have the schedule for meetings? I don't have it in front of me.
I believe it is May 24th. I'll just confirm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it says on May 24th, each member will present what each has learned from the interview process, and then the committee will begin to formulate its evaluation. That's on page 2 of our minutes. So,
Right.
we will reconvene. You also, in essence, you're going to have until May 24th to conduct your interviews with stakeholders. If you run into any difficulty whatsoever, please let Helene know, and then we can manage through whatever challenge it is that you're encountering. And so, any questions? Yes, Matt.
I hate to always be the one asking the question, but
Well, you're new to the process, so you're
New
supposed
guy.
to have questions. So no problem.
thank you. Happy to be on the team. So just a process question. So are we getting you, am I getting the rest of the committee anything in advance of our next call, or
No.
I'm just using those calls to inform my view that I'm then one of 4 people on the committee discussing.
Yeah, I mean, you handle it the way, the way you would ordinarily handle these kinds of things. But I'll share what I do is I take every question. I create a separate form for everyone that I interview, and I write down their responses to each question, almost verbatim. And then when we do have our meeting on the 24th, I share with you what each party has responded to each question, so that we get a sense of what kind of continuity, consistency, or even deviation might exist.
Catherine, since we're seeing you now, I had made you may not have heard it, but I made a comment at the beginning. Ventura's on both of our lists, so I know you want
I
more
heard
to
you.
do.
Yeah,
So
we can
whatever you
connect,
want to
Matt.
do.
It doesn't matter
Yeah.
to me. I could talk to him as well, but
That's one of the tweaks that Helene will make, so that
Okay.
you don't have to duplicate effort. You're making enough effort as it is.
Catherine, do you want to share your process with Matt about how you conduct your interviews, so that he has
sure. So I do the same thing that James does, Matt. I just take notes on what everybody's feedback is verbatim, and then generally share it back to the group when we talk. Like in broader, if someone has something specific to say, that, in other words, like give it back, so that if someone had something from their role that's specific, it gets a little bit dicier sometimes when it's people at the department. And I try and generalize that because they are his direct reports. But I think it's been a great process, because we get to hear from people that are not only working at the department, but also across. And again, like something like if you have the person who's the regional Volks spokesperson, you're going to know that that's them. So that's where it makes sense to have specific feedback from a group, So that's just how I do it. And I think Amanda has her own process as well, similar to ours though, right, Amanda?
Yeah, I do. I do the exact same thing, take verbatim notes, and then I typically report out more of a key themes that I hear when I hear a lot of consistent feedback. And then if there's anything that's more pointed, I don't usually sort of name individuals, but I will sort of surface what I think might be interesting or important individual points that are made.
Thank you, Catherine and Amanda. Catherine reminded me that I actually say in the beginning of each of my stakeholder interviews that anything they say is confidential, and I'll keep it confidential, especially when interviewing staff. But I also share the same with stakeholders, and unless they authorize me to speak openly about any comment they make, I share with them that the conversation is private and confidential, just as a practice.
Yeah, just to build on that, just in terms of process, that's why you don't share your notes with each other. Your notes are for yourselves, and you bring forward the themes and any specifics that are relevant. That has been the practice, and that keeps it consistent within the open meeting law and so on.
Right.
The other point that committee members know, and Matt, you're the newer member, the commissioner has a standard email that he sends out to his leadership team before these interviews, saying, I want you to talk with the board members who will be calling you, and be candid, and here's the process. So you will not be calling, these will not be cold calls.
Yeah. Okay. As it pertains to our agenda, which is typically the way we've functioned, we get through our agenda pretty quickly. But this is that time for anyone who has any additional questions or concerns or thoughts. This would be the opportunity to share those. Otherwise, we will give you 30 minutes back today.
Has this become the standard for our monthly board meetings? 50% of scheduled time is how long we take? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking, right? You know?
If we're as
Well, we
effective,
think
Matt, the time,
Go ahead, Catherine.
sorry, I was going to say, as long as we're as effective as James was here.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It's always better to get 30 than to lose 30.
Yeah.
So very busy.
May I just clarify one
Yes,
one
please.
item,
Absolutely.
tiny item for the record? Committee Chair Morton, earlier in the meeting, you referred to extensive conversation that the committee had yesterday. I think you meant at the previous meeting.
Oh, yes.
Is that correct? Yes.
I'm sorry. I didn't think that closed that circle. Yes, we all participated.
Seems like yesterday, but it was March 11th.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
right. No, I was referencing the fact that we had a diversity training of the board yesterday.
Oh,
And-
of course, of
yes.
course.
Yes, and so we
Thank
were
you.
with each other the whole day yesterday, and so for folks to come back today after spending multiple hours with each other yesterday is a tribute to the commitment that each of us has to this work. And I was thanking folks for that. Sorry.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. All of you got it. I was the one who missed it. Yes, got it. Thanks.
No problem.
Okay.
All right. With all of that said, anything else for the good of the order?
Not from me. All set. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you all. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time. Have a great weekend. Hopefully, it will be a time for rest and recovery.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, everybody. All right.
Bye-bye.